Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are watching this. Welcome to the last episode of season 22 23 of the Since I Was Young podcast for all things Heart of Midlothian. Joining you, as always, is myself, Ewan Ramsey, and Alan Scrimger, and we are delighted to be joined by two was a good friends of ours in John and Graham. Boys, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We do really appreciate it, and to give more shithousery to Alan as well. So that'll be fun. As we said at the start, we're just going to be going through. Was it was it a series of the highlights that has been going on for this ridiculous roller coaster of a season? So we're going to be going through. Was it players like in general, ones we want to keep, ones that have done well, the thoughts of the season in general, some in particular, report cards as well, and some transfers and outward transfers as well. We would all like to see. So we do hope you enjoy this one as well. And as always, guys, if you aren't subscribed to the Since I Was Young was a podcast via our YouTube page, please think about subscribing. And if you want to get in contact with either the podcast page, myself or Alan, and I'm sure John and Graham will like to share their thoughts as well. So we will leave all of our details in the description and on screen as always. And would you know, at the last episode of this season, and we have got breaking, and I mean fucking breaking news to give you, as we have just came on to this call just now, no more than 10 minutes ago. It has been announced officially that Stephen Naismith will be in the dugout for the next 2 years, which I can safely say from all of us that we are delighted with. So I guess that's as good as a place to start as any. So I'll throw the first part of the question to John, seeing as he's like top of my screen. So John, thoughts on that? Were you expecting Renee Smith to actually get the job that was easy? Let's say.
To be honest, I've kind of expected Naismith to get the job permanently for a while. I think since he's come in, he's kind of steadied the ship and then a wee bit extra as well. So you're seeing far more confident players on the pitch. There's a lot more fluidity to them. They seem to all kind of know what they're doing, which is something that in the last couple of
Aye.
years has been a bit of a problem. And when you look at some of the names that were touted as like possible alternatives, none of them particularly excited me. There was the Cifuentes name and all that, and a lot of people seem to have been right into him. I didn't see it personally. I think Naismith has handled himself really well with the media. He's had the certain players like Natiaka is one that immediately springs to mind, playing considerably better since he's been around. He's obviously good with the boys. He knows the club. He knows the youngsters as well that will potentially be getting bled in next year through his time managing the B team. And he's a reasonably inexpensive and low risk appointment. Like we saw, he's got a 2 year contract. I think that's kind of a best case scenario, to be honest. I think I've wanted Naismith in permanently, and Alan will back this up. I've wanted Naismith in permanently since quite a lot of folk started to kind of get on the bandwagon. I said quite early on that Naisy was my guy.
Yeah, I'll back that. I'll back that. I think it's interesting, like we've said it before about the managers, like you're saying, John, about that Cifuentes as well. I was probably a little bit ignorant to him because I'd never really heard of him before.
Mm.
Aside from when he was linked with the Aberdeen job, I think that was kind of the first time that I'd heard his name. Did a little bit of research, a little bit of reading, and he did come across as quite an interesting candidate. But I can understand why they've gone down the Nazy route rather than that. But like I've said it for weeks that either appointment is a massive gamble, regardless of who it is, for different reasons. But I think Naismith is maybe the safer option, and it'll depend on what side of the fence you fall on, whether you're happy with the club taking the safe option or you'd rather they went a little bit out the box and tried something a bit different. I don't know what Graham thinks about that one, but there might well be another opinion in there.
I think I'm in the minority. I put on Twitter about 3 hours ago. I think it's underwhelming. Now, don't get me wrong. I will back Nazy 100% without any question about that. But I fail to believe that out of all the managers we've interviewed, that we've given the guy the best. We've given the job to a guy that's only managing the B team and has only managed 7 games in the Premier League. I find it hard to believe that that's the best we could do. Now, again, don't get me wrong. He's done very well. There's no doubt about that. Things have definitely improved. Performances have improved. Aberdeen game, we were brilliant. Ross County game, we were great. The Celtic game, until Cochran got sent off, we were excellent. The Hibs game, again, until Cochran got sent off, I thought we were very good. But for me, it's still only 2 wins out of 7. He hasn't won 5 of those games. So I think there is a bit of me that thinks this is a risk. Now, again, if you go back to Craig Levein, the Ian Cathro experience that failed, obviously. After that, after the Cathro thing, we decided, we've interviewed a few folk. Do you know what? Let's just give it to Levein in the first place. It looks like we've done the same again. We're just giving it to a guy that's already there. I'd have liked to see us think it's. I would have liked to see us think outside the box a bit and bring in somebody a little bit more experienced. The simple fact is, Nazy can't even coach in European football. He's not got his coaching badges yet. So you have to see now that the fact is that Frankie McAvoy's been named head coach because Nazy's not got his coaching badges yet. I want nothing more than Naismith to work, and I really hope it does. But I've got my doubts.
So in that same respect, was it? Sorry, there, Alan. Like, would you just to kind of like explore that, mate? So, like, in your like sort of view, if we didn't get was it Naismith on a permanent, is there anybody like was it in particular, like in particular that you would have liked to have actually seen there?
Well, I mean, Cifuentes would have been thinking of the box, and by the sounds of it, he plays really good football. Not that I don't think Naismith won't, because he has shown signs of that. But I'd have liked to have heard who else we interviewed, because according to Andrew McKinley, we interviewed a lot of folk. Well, who were they? You know, who was in the frame? I'd like to know who that was, because to then just to basically just go back to the guy that's already there, just seems a bit the cheap option for me. And again, I've said before, I want nothing more than this to be a great appointment, and I'll back him 100%. There's no question about that. I'll back anyone that gets the job. But I just don't want this being another Ian Cathro situation where Cathro came in and he started well. He beat Rangers 4-1, beat Motherwell 3-0 at Fir Park. We were great, and it fell apart. I don't want that happening again with Naismith.
That's fair. That's fair. No, it makes sense. It does make sense. And like I said, there's that many different opinions and views, and obviously, you know, we've all kind of got different opinions and views just from sitting here chatting about it. But I think we all, as we say, we all share the same common thing, which is we all want it to work. I hope that it does. I believe that it will. The sample size of the small number of games is something that you can say, you know, and I agree with you. I agree with what you say about the 2 wins, etc. But as John and I mentioned just prior to coming on this, that the games that he's been in charge of were against the top teams in the top part of the table. You know, you want to see how he does across a considerable period against other opposition. Obviously, I mean, we'll talk about it a wee bit later on because I spoke about our away form and stuff. I think that'll be a big thing that needs to get resolved, and that would be the case for whichever manager was in the door.
No, man, exactly. I mean, just kind of was it a kickoff? Was it on the actual review itself? And obviously, we'll probably was it we'll to talk about the like what we hope to see when the new was it season that kicks on. But so I've got a few subjects that we're I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to throw a random one out there, and I'm going to go a bit of a left field. So anybody can was it pipe up first if they want to shout out. So during the transfer it was a market during the last summertime, who has been the worst signing of the year?
I think for me, the worst signing of last summer kind of has to be Keo Matsoglu. I think, like I said to you and Alan, just moments before we came on there, you and I think he's come in and he's done a job for a guy that we signed on a reasonably inexpensive wage as a backup, but we paid almost £500,000 for the guy.
Fucking outrageous.
He's been such a disappointment, and I don't know whether it's taken him some time to acclimatise. Like, no, everybody's got to up sticks and move to a new country and perform at their absolute best for 90 minutes every game right away. Like we've seen it happen with so many people. Big Zal is a perfect example of that. Zal Yukis was pretty atrocious at times when he first came to Hearts, but once he settled in, he became a club legend. Am I saying I expect that to happen with Orestes Kiermaier-Zoglou? No, not quite yet. I'm not ready to put my neck out so far there, but
How about the Andy Halliday, mate? Fucking Hearts legend. They get his statue up in the fucking plaza.
Oh, come on. How long is it taking for Andy Halliday to get brought up?
Fucking right, son.
I think Keogh's been a large disappointment considering the large fee. And there hasn't been much in terms of returns at all for that money, and that's a lot of money for Hearts to be thrown around on a player. You compare and contrast that to Shankland, who costs I think roughly the same, perhaps even 50 or 100 grand less than Kiermaier-Zoglou did, and he banged in 28 goals and had a fantastic season in the absence of Liam Boyce, especially when we really needed somebody to step up.
Saying that though, like that's got to be the worst shout of the year. With when I think it was like a few weeks before we actually signed Shankland, and then there's was it myself and Alan saying, "I'm not sure about him. I'm really not sure."
Listen, no, you go.
I think it was quite healthy and you know, I don't think it was all that mental to have doubts about Shankland. You know, he had done really well at Dundee United in the Championship. But other than that, he hadn't really had that career that screamed potentially 30-goal striker. And you know, the cost again with Shankland was quite high. You expect massive returns with that. Now, I think he's actually exceeded expectations with the returns we've gotten on him this
100%.
season.
Huge.
But yeah, it's natural to kind of have doubts about a player that comes with that kind of price tag.
Oh, for sure. That was more. Sorry, I'm just going to jump on that. That was more where my kind of concerns came from about Shankland back then. It was the amount that was paid for him, or the amount that was rumoured that we were paying for him at that point was a bit extreme. But it's because we're not really used to spending big money on these sorts of players. But obviously, as you say, John, it's gone incredibly well, and nobody could have seen him scoring that number of goals and doing what he's done. And even just his all-round play in general has been unbelievable. My shout for... No, on you go, John.
Yeah, just I think especially when Boyce went down, to see how he was able to adapt his style, because I think he was probably expecting and intending to be an out-and-out striker and be the sort of guy who led the line. But when Boyce went down, you saw him coming deeper, you saw him fighting for balls, using his strength in more ways than just kind of trying to put the ball in the back of the net. I think he's grown as a player just in the last year phenomenally, and the work he's done for Hearts this season has more than paid for the transfer fee.
Oh, for sure. I'm going to just throw my signing or worst signing of the season out there, because you'll be surprised to know it's actually not Keogh, as much as I agree with you, because I'm not a Keogh fan by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm willing to give him a little bit more time. I'm willing to just hang in there and see what happens, purely because we've extended the contract of the glorious Austrian. So if it doesn't work with Keogh, I'm quite all right with that. My shout is actually going to be... I can't believe I'm saying it, because he started incredibly well when he came in. Snodgrass. Why are we not talking about Robert Snodgrass?
Oh, that's another story in itself, though. Fuck me, Alan.
There are many, and I'll throw it to Graham in a minute. There are many episodes of this where I said that Robert Snodgrass has played a game in his slippers and he was unbelievable for weeks, because he was. But, and I'm not even putting in the stuff that's maybe happened behind the scenes, you know, because we'll touch on that at some point. It became very, 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 very evident very early that teams worked it out. And was that Naismith's fault? Was that Snoddy's fault? I don't know. But we said it, you know. Oh, sorry, not Naismith's fault. Neilson's fault. I'm getting my managers mixed up. I like
all the managers.
Yes, I can't keep up. Robbie shaving his head's totally thrown me. I was a big fan of the Snodgrass signing, a big fan, and he did incredibly well. But it just went south very, very quickly, and that was a frustration. And I imagine, although he was a free signing, you know, and a senior player, he would have been on a sizable wage. I think that's important to be noted as well. Like, we're not just going to have signed him for pennies and, you know, said, okay, come and do a job for 6 months or however long it was. But yeah, I think in context, yes, Keogh would be up there for me, but I do think Snodgrass just trumps him, and that's kind of where I'm at.
I mean, just to kind of put a point on that, Alan. I mean, could you just to kind of like see it from the other point of view? So, like you mentioned how teams quickly kind of worked that out, where was it if you shut down was it Snoddy, then our I kind of was it creation like of what was the chance he got like was it shut down? But can you really blame that on him though? Like where it should be actually like was it Neilson to actually say like how many times we've actually mentioned that he doesn't tend to have a plan, would it be like actually there?
Yeah,
Just
I
jump
agree.
in there, guys.
No, you go.
I think a player Snodgrass's age and with Snodgrass's experience should be able to adapt. If he's, I think what's happened when he came in is he's come in and I think, like you say, Al, he's probably been on a pretty sizable wage. I think he's come in and he's earned his place. He was absolutely dynamite the first few games he came in, but I think he got too comfortable. And I think when teams started to suss him out a wee bit, he made absolutely no attempt to adapt. And somebody with his experience should be able to do that. I think Robbie's failing was not identifying that sooner and keeping him in the team. And I don't know, you hear all sorts about them two being way too cozy together or falling out with each other. You never know. It's different narratives and different days of the week. But regardless of what might have went on backstage or behind the scenes, Snodgrass on the pitch didn't make any attempt, for what I could see, to adapt to teams closing him down. And he was at times our kind of main creative force in the midfield. So if he's not really making any real attempt to like improve anything, then like when he gets played out of the game, that's us. We're pretty much goosed.
So was the Graham? Would you like agree with that as a Noddy being the worst signing of the campaign, or did you have another person in mind?
Well, to be fair, I think Snodgrass and Keogh are both very good shouts. I'm not a massive fan of Keogh, and I think the money that we paid for him is probably a big part of that as well. He's just not done enough. And it's still, I mean, the fact that, I mean, I keep going back to this thing about Stephen Naismith as well. That game Easter Road, we're 1-0 down with 50 minutes to go, and he brings Keogh on. I thought, what was the point in that? What's he going to do? He's not going to get on the ball and make things happen. And I think with Snodgrass, everyone had to go through him. It was like Rolls and Civic and Cochrane had to give the ball to Snodgrass, and it didn't work. He was caught out far too many times. And I still have freaking nightmares about the fact that Robbie Neilson, for some reason, decided against Rangers of all teams to play midfield three of Barry Mackay, Snodgrass, and Garen Keogh. How was that ever going to work? What was that even thinking about doing that? And I still I can still never forgive Robbie for even trying that. That was just a disastrous decision.
Well, it was, and he. No, you go.
For me, there's another player as well that I think should be on that list as well, and it's George Grant. For me, I don't think he's done anywhere near enough. I think Aaron McInniff was a better player and offered more than George Grant is.
Yeah.
He started off.
Yes, he was.
Alan.
I thought he started off okay, and then once he gets sent off against Zurich for that ridiculous dive, it went downhill, and I've never seen anything off him recently to say this guy deserves to play. So for me, I think George Grant's got to be on that list, and I feel sorry for the guy as well. And I know folk have mentioned it as well, but I think the signing of Garen Keogh was just a ridiculous signing as well. You give the guy a chance. And I think I fell into the thing as well that this is an exciting signing. He's a young laddie. He's coming across from Newcastle. A lot of teams were after him, and we didn't use him properly. We never gave him a chance. And of course, his last game, he goes and scores at Ibrox. So I think there is a number of players on that list, but I think George Grant, for me, is up there as one of the highest that should be on that list, because I think he's been very poor.
Interesting.
That's a fantastic shout. Yeah.
I can back that.
When was the last time you saw Grant do anything productive? Like it's been months since he's done anything productive. The last notable thing he did was get sent off for a dive.
Yeah. The thing is, like, for me, I was a big Aaron McInniff fan, as Ewan will testify. And I don't think we should have let him go, but that's just me. And as you say, I don't think that George Grant is an upgrade on him, to be honest. But it is what it is. I didn't have George Grant on my list, but maybe I should have now that I think about it.
Yeah,
interesting. Well, I mean, all in Interesting thoughts though, but I'm going to turn it around. But I'm going to put a wee was it with a twist on it. So again, anybody can shout out. I'm going to go for your player of the year, but it can't be Shankland.
I'm gonna start straight off the bat and say Alex Cochrane. I think he's been great. I know that a lot of folk have said, "Oh, he's been naive at times with sending off." Celtic game was never a sending off. The Hibs game, I don't even blame him for that. I blame Carroll's because again he gets caught completely wrong side of the defense of the attacker. I think Cochrane's been great. He offers so much going forward as an attacking threat. He's got a few goals to his name. He's, the goal that he set up for Shankland against Aberdeen, great ball in. And I think Cochrane, for me, has been outstanding this season. And anyone that says otherwise is talking absolute pish because he's been great.
Yeah, Graham, like I would be more inclined to agree with you on that. Like, I mean, like throughout the last two seasons, like both like sort of my self and Alan, like I've said, he's the kind of player where he kind of goes unnoticed a wee bit on how good he actually is. Like, like he doesn't need to do anything like spectacular. Like he just sort of that goes about his business, does what he's meant to actually do. And Cochrane was actually on like my like sort of like player of the year besides was it Shanks as well. So I'm actually interested to actually see what Alan's choice would be. Was it Cinti Canny pick? Was it Shankland now?
Barry Mackay.
100%. I don't need to say any more than that. I don't need to say it now. No, my funnily enough, it's no Barry Mackay actually. I'd love it to be. I would absolutely love it to be. My player of the year is one that's not going to get a shout by many people because I don't think it's a very popular shout. I'm going to go Xander Clark. And I think for the pure and simple reason that we've had a lot of injuries as the season's gone on this year. We've had obviously Benny being out, we've had Halkett out, we've had Boyce out, we've had Kingsley out for a considerable period of time. We had Gordon out, of course, as well. And I think everybody talks about the players that were missing from that group. The Halketts, oh, we miss a defender like Halkett. Oh, we miss a midfielder like Benny. Oh, we miss a forward like Boyce. Nobody's said we miss a goalkeeper who is as good as Craig Gordon, in my opinion. And I think, Xander Clark, when he came in, was a very intelligent signing because it was, I think, a case of this is the contingency. He is the next number one when Gordon decides to call it a day, whenever that may be. And yeah, listen, Xander Clark's had his moments this season that he's maybe misjudged crosses or whatever, or he's had a few wee shaky moments, but Gordon didn't have a brilliant start to the season either. He had a few wee mistakes in his game as well, compared to how he was last season when he was phenomenal. But it's understandable. The guy's 40 years old or however old he is now. But I just think nobody's talking about the fact that we've missed Gordon because of how good Xander Clark has actually been in terms of picking up the gloves and going, all right, well, smash out now. And he's an experienced goalkeeper. I just think he's a very, very good player. And certainly, put it this way, if it had been, if we didn't have him and Gordon got injured and you're looking at cheesy Ross Stewart or Harry Stone to be the number one for the remainder of the season, Ewan's already having a heart attack just at the sheer mention of the name cheesy.
Fucking the arse felt out my trousers there, like, don't you mention his name?
No, but it just shows that Xander Clark is a very dependable goalkeeper, and I was very, very pleased when we got him in. Couldn't believe that any other club didn't take a punt on him, which is why I was a bit like, why has nobody else got him? Why have we been able to get him this easily, almost? But there's certainly a lot of teams in this league that could have done with Xander Clark, but I'm delighted that we have him.
John, who's it going to, son?
Just off the back of what Alan was saying there, it is hard to argue with Xander Clark. And I don't know, we've done worst signing this season, but I don't know if we're going to do best signing this season. But I think he probably would be in a shout. In terms of player of the season overall, for me, it goes to Gino Ginelli. Josh has had an absolutely phenomenal season. He's had, I think, kind of a breakout year that I think a lot of times as well, Ginelli's play has allowed Shankland to have the sort of season that he's had. While Shankland, after Boyce went down, has had to drop deeper a lot more and had to do a lot more of kind of grunt work in the lead up to trying to score goals. I think Gino has taken a lot of the load off his shoulders by doing a lot of the running about. I've said this to Alan countless times. Gino Ginelli has phenomenal legs. He just needs to trust them and use them. And this season, he started to do that more. And he's had an absolutely phenomenal season. He's become quite indispensable, I think. Ginelli would be my player of the season, even if Shankland was in the running, because he's made it possible.
Interesting, boys. Interesting. So, like, as a collective, who would we say is our player of the year?
We've all gone for different ones, haven't we? We've all gone for different ones.
Let's come to the conclusion. Let's work as a team here, Alan. Come on.
So I don't disagree that much with Alan. So I think Xander Clark I'm on board with if we want to give it to Xander.
The Graham, they're going for it.
No, I'm going for Yutaro Oda. Only 4 games. I'm going for Yutaro Oda. He's been great. I love him.
Legend, mate. That boy's going to be that boy's going to be a fucking legend next season. And on that, on that note as well, as we just mentioned. So like throughout like sort of this year, like as well. Like at the of the start of this season as well, like obviously we all had high expectations for like the last season's results as well, like but getting in the second half of last year as well, just steamrolling teams, actually getting results home, some away, but compared that to this year as well, I mean, what I kind of did want to kind of throw out there, before we even they kicked the ball like last year. What were your general thoughts in the sense that do you think that this was a season would have been much like last year as well? Like was it we'll have to of course the addition of the group stage with the football as well. What parts of the season have you liked? What parts have you not liked? And is there anything that you wish went like was it differently? I.e., was it if it was to do by the manager, players, like etc. Balls in your court, boys. So anybody wants to have their say first, please fire it away.
I'll open it up. Why not? I think, of course, me talk. Come on now. I think I said in our episode that we did at the start of the season or the tail end of last season, I kind of said I would have been not happy with finishing 4th, but I would have taken it had we been a bit more competitive for it, shall we say. The fact that we absolutely strolled to it last season to 3rd place, I was kind of expecting the other teams to kind of raise their levels a bit, and there might have been a bit more a contest for 3rd place, which obviously didn't end up being the case. But it's one of those seasons that we said it again, like you talk about the European football, the group stage, the impact of that. And it was going to have an impact because the squad that we've got or that we had at that time wasn't that big a squad. But, we came through it, we had injuries, and I think that's the biggest difference between last season and this is the injuries that have totally curtailed it. The form, the tail off in the Robbie Neilson end of that, stint, it wasn't great. But if we'd finished 4th place as we have, and it was a competitive season and we were in and around 3rd, kind of, swapping and chopping and changing with, say, for example, in Aberdeen every other week, I could say, okay, I'll maybe take a 4th. But the manner that it's ended up 4th, it feels just like a disappointment because we were 3rd for a considerable period of the season. So, I hear a lot of people talking about, we threw it away, and we kind of did. But there were obviously, factors as to why that happened. I don't know whether you can subscribe to the point of, we should have stacked Robbie Neilson earlier. Maybe we should have. But it's very easy to say that in hindsight. I don't know what anybody else thinks about that, but that's my tuppence anyway.
When I think back to the end of last season, and I look back at how I would have perceived the 22-23 season from last summer. I was quite concerned at the end of last year. We lost Suter. We didn't have the goal scoring threat of Ellis Sims. We got rid of, like you mentioned, McInnes as well. So we didn't have a whole lot of depth in either defence, midfield, or attack. I felt that the recruitment by and large in midfield this year was particularly poor. We've brought in Kai Rolls, who, while he has the odd clang, and I think he's pretty solid, and he's still fairly young. I think we've recruited some really talented young players like him. In terms of Shankland, he speaks for himself. I had hoped for probably fourth at a minimum going into this season, given that we were going to be playing in Europe, and we struggled at the end of last season as well. So I was like, we need to sort the tactical side of things out, because I felt that the 3-4-3 that we insisted on playing was way too pedestrian, too many sideways passes. Like I said earlier, Buginelli never trusted his legs, and I don't know whether that was a tactical thing where he wasn't really given the freedom to do so, or if it was just a confidence thing. But we needed to change something. We came into this season, we didn't start particularly well. We really started to fire on all cylinders after New Year with the back-to-back 3-0 pumpings at Hibs, and then we sort of sputtered again, and then we went on that really shit run that eventually ended up with Robbie Neilson getting sacked. So it was a frustrating sort of first half of the season. We started to really look much better. We got third place and we ended up miles in front, and we pissed it away. Like, there's no two ways about it. We absolutely capitulated, and that was quite unacceptable, the manner in which we did so. If we had had a deep cup run, I think that would have been far more palatable and easier to take, but we got tapped out in the Viaplay Cup by Kilmarnock in one of the worst games of football that I've ever attended. And of course, we ran into Celtic in the Scottish. Not much you can do about that, but like we performed piss poorly in the cups this year. So to capitulate in third and lose that in the manner we did, plus not really have a cup run, it was very frustrating. And the style of football we were playing for most of the season was not pleasant to watch at times. So fourth, happy with, but at the same time very disappointed with how we ended up fourth. And we've seen bad seasons from Hearts. This was not a bad season. Like, it was a frustrating season and it was turbulent, but it wasn't like a horrible. We weren't like 8th or like 10th. Like we've been in just in the last 10 years. We've had seasons like that, so it wasn't like a horrible season from Hearts, but far too inconsistent. And just disappointing. Next season, hopefully we'll be a bit more consistent. We've got Naismith, who seems a bit more attack minded as a coach. Seems to have a bit more of a clear system and more of a plan of what role he wants each player to play than Robbie Neilson had toward the end. I feel that Robbie Neilson had pretty much run out of ideas, and I don't think that the players helped. But yeah, I'm optimistic for next season. But fourth this year, if you told me we would be fourth start of this season, I would have taken it. And put it into the context of how we've played this season and the performances, it tastes a wee bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would be more inclined to agree with you both. Like, it's not particularly that we finished was it like in fourth place. I think it's just the manner that we actually did. I think that's probably the most disappointing thing, like sort of all round. I mean, was it the Graham? Would you tend to agree with that, or would you think that we should have maybe was it John mentioned there, to potentially was it sack, was it Robbie, was it earlier on in the season?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I listened to the podcast last week, as always, because you're my two favourites, and you haven't paid me to say that, but it's true. And Alan used the word frustrated, and I think that's the right word to use, because that's the word I would use as well.
Favorite word in the fucking English dictionary, mate. Honestly,
when it comes to Hearts, absolutely. But I mean,
for sure.
I expected to finish third because I didn't see anything of Aberdeen and Hibs that made me worried. I know we had European football, injuries obviously played a massive part, and I did worry how we would get over the European games, but I thought we did okay. And then we had that spell after World Cup where we were clear, and I thought, I can't see anyone catching us now. We're going to finish this comfortably. And around March time, it fell apart. And yeah, there was a lot of problems. The away form, as we've talked about earlier, is brutal. But it's been like that for a long time. And I did think that maybe if Neilson had been sacked before that, maybe it might have helped. I don't know if Naismith had come in earlier, it might have made a massive difference. But it is, for me, it is a massive frustration because the money involved in that, £5 million group stage football, I'm honestly still raising that we've not finished third. Now, again, I think Alan and that are right. Had at the start of the season, somebody said we'll finish fourth, it would have been great. I might have accepted it, but it's the way it's been done. It's been such a frustrating end to the season, and we still had that chance to get third in the last couple of games, and we just couldn't get over the line. But it is a massive frustration. Robbie, of course, takes a lot of the blame. Of course he does. Managers always do. But for me, I can't forgive the players for chucking it. In big games, they chucked it. They didn't want to be there. It was quite clear, and I can't forgive him for that. As much as Robbie takes the blame, because managers, as I say, always do, the players for me were a disgrace in that period. They just chucked it. They clearly didn't want to play for him. That's unforgivable for me. I don't care who you are. You've got fans out there that put money at the foundation of Hearts, that turn up every week, that put their hand of money at the club, and you're chucking a game because you can't be arsed with a manager. Nah, for me, that's unforgivable for me. And again, I don't want to pick on players, but again, one of them are prime examples that is Barry Mackay. Now, I like Barry Mackay as a footballer. He's a great player. But in big games, he goes missing. And far too often under Robert Neilson, he was playing the full game. And you're thinking, why is he still on? Because he's offering nothing. And I know that a lot of folk talk about Alan Forrest, but when Forrest does play, he actually tries. But Barry Mackay at times just offers nothing. That, for me, again, for a guy of his ability, is unforgivable.
Sorry, just to jump in on that, I think I saw something earlier and I'm trying to find it now and it's actually annoying me that I can't. But I'm sure Barry Mackay, and maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure he started every game like domestically this season, apart from one, I think. Again, I could be very wrong in that, depending on injuries and stuff. But I'm sure it was somebody on Twitter and I favorited it and now I can't find it. He had like 39 starts or something, which for a player, like you say, that isn't he obviously is a bit of a luxury player, is Barry Mackay, and when he's not on it, you can see that he's not on it, and you can tell that he's not on it right for the start because his body language is just all over the place. It just looks like he can't be arsed, like you say. But I think he had surgery or he had an operation just at the end of the season there, because there was a picture of him I seen with him in a protective boot. So that might have had something to do with it. He might have been carrying a knock. I don't know. But, I'll kind of take us to the next point that I was going to talk about, and it's kind of leads off Barry Mackay, to be honest with you. Underwhelming players of the season. And, I'm going to do it in terms of players that I expect so much more from, and we've seen so much more from, and they've just not delivered in this particular campaign for one reason or another. And I think top of that list, aside from Barry Mackay, probably just slightly above him, is Stephen Kingsley. I absolutely adore Stephen Kingsley, as I do a majority of the Hearts squad. I love this group of players, aside from a couple that you'll know. But Stephen Kingsley, for me, such a quality season last year, and the drop-off has been unbelievable. And I don't know, he never really had a consistent run because he's had injuries, and I don't know if it's just me, but this season feels like it's gone on forever because of the World Cup being in the middle of it. But Kingsley has just, as I say, the fall in form is just so alarming, and it kind of worries me to the point where, obviously, we've got Alex Cochrane at left back, who is a more than capable player, and he's the starter every week. But Kingsley's just, to go from such a high to just what we've seen this season, and I'm not saying he's one of the players that's chucked it, because I don't put him in that bracket. If there are rumours to believe that he was the one that lumped Snodgrass in the changing room, and if that's the case, then I would very much like to see Stephen Kingsley contracted for life, regardless of form. But yeah, he's one of those boys that I love to watch him play, and the free kicks and everything is unbelievable. But I miss that Kingsley. Maybe Cochrane being as good as he is kind of softens the blow a little bit. But when Cochrane gets his inevitable red cards, Stephen Kingsley coming in with the form he had last year, I'd be more than happy with.
No, it's funny
trust Andy Halliday. Sorry, Graham. I would trust Andy Halliday at left back more than I would trust Stephen Kingsley at the minute.
I trust Andy Halliday with my fucking life, mate.
Yeah, the drop off from Kingsley has been quite abysmal, even allowing for the injuries. And I don't know if there's maybe something longer term that's affected them, that's caused that sort of drop off in form. But when you look at him last year and even the year before that in the Championship, he was one of our absolute. He was one of the first names you would put on the team sheet. I don't recall seeing such a dramatic drop off in quality from someone in a while. Sorry, Graham, I'll let you go on with yours and then I'll do mine after Graham because I jumped on top of him there.
No, I was just going to say it's weird because like we all know that Kingsley's great at free kicks and he's got a brilliant reputation for free kicks. But I go back to that Hibs game at Easter Road when we were losing 1-0 under Naismith. We got that free kick in the last minute, and I turned to my lad and said, Kingsley won't score here. And normally you're thinking this is a definite goal because it's Kingsley, but I never felt confident he was going to score. And the drop off has been incredible. I mean, he can play left centre back, he can play left back, but for me right now, I'd have Alec Cochrane in front of him every single time. He's just been so disappointing. And I think, Alan, you're right. The drop off has been incredible. I don't know what's happened, whether he's got an injury that we don't know about or something, but it has been incredible just how far he's dropped off. But he's not the only one. I think as well, I would also have to go with Kye Rowles as well. I love Kye Rowles. I think he's been fantastic. But recently, he has been so poor. Every single time we play a game now, all teams do now is play long balls over the top, and Rowles is caught every single time. He's far too soft. He needs to either go to the gym or do something because he's far too soft. And again, you go back to that Hibs game at Tynecastle. The sending off for Cochrane happens because all they do is play a long ball. Rowles gets caught, doesn't know where Nisbet is. He gets caught, and we lose Cochrane because of that. Rowles is costing us far too much recently, and I love Kye Rowles, but he's costing us far too much recently. He's been at fault for a lot of goals. I mean, you can look back at most goals that we lose and say somebody's at fault there, but for me, Rowles is at fault for a lot of these because he's getting caught far too often.
Do you think?
To be honest, I don't disagree. Yeah, sorry about that, Alan. I don't disagree with you at all. I think Kye Rowles has kind of gotten away with it a wee bit. Graham, would you maybe, do you think perhaps that Hearts were too hasty in handing out that massive contract to him? And do you think he's maybe gotten a bit too comfortable since he's had that deal signed?
I don't think there's any doubt. I think he's got a new contract. I thought, well, that's me sorted for life now. You know, I'm not saying he's going to switch off, but I just think at times he's far too naive in his defending. Any single time a team plays a ball over the top, he's favourite to win it and he gets beat. And again, I don't want to criticise recruitment because I'm a massive fan of Kye Rowles on that. But for me, one of the biggest issues in January, we spent all January trying to get Callum Patterson back and we switched our eye off the ball. We were never going to get Patterson back. It was quite clear he wasn't coming back. And we had no plan B. That, for me, was a massive thing under Robert Neilson. January recruitment was terrible. We needed at least 2 or 3 more players in. But we spent far too long trying to get Patterson back and we failed. And I think, Kye Rowles, for me, has completely switched off. And I'm hoping, once he gets a proper pre-season, now Naismith's in, hopefully better coaching might help. But Rowles is one of these guys that, for me, has completely dropped off.
I think the thing about Kye Rowles that we have to remember as well is that this is his first full season with us. You know what I mean? It might take him a bit longer to get used to it, but I totally agree with you. He does get bodied far too often. I have nightmares of him versus Curtis Main constantly running through my head. I can hate Curtis Main. But he's one of the ones that we were talking about for a summer transfer, and if that happened, I'm game over. But Kye can get better, and I think that's why they've given him that contract. Plus, I think maybe the slight hype after the World Cup has added to the fact that they gave him a contract so early into his first contract. But yeah, I think, I don't know, Ewan, if you've got anybody that's kind of underwhelming performer of the season, or if we've kind of covered the main ones, because those were the ones that jumped into my mind.
I mean,
Andy Halliday.
You're playing.
Don't say that. You'll never get on again, Graham. Didn't say that.
Playing with
Where's the Zoom meeting
fire.
going? Where's it going?
Playing with fire, my man. No, I think when we were talking about, was it like, with the Kye, throughout this year especially, he's done far less than than like what he would like sort of usually was to contribute to. Um, I mean, me and Alan have had this was a conversation a few times. Like, I wouldn't maybe go as far to say as he's been under sort of whelming, but in terms of the performances he's had throughout this year, I think one of them would maybe be Alan. What was it? It was a Forest. Like, it's not to say that he's a bad player. Like, I mean, obviously, like, him, like, was it having a blinder when he still was a played for Livingston? I think again, like, I wouldn't even go as far to say that he's been found out as such, but like any time that he's came on from the bench or he started, he's never been that a kind of player to actually think, right, he can was a change a game. Was it like, look, maybe if he's playing on a system with like with it was a Naismith, maybe he can have a bit more of a a creative role. But even on those odd times when he was playing at was it like I kind of mind if it was it the right back like or left back, but like I was thinking like what why like I mean like it didn't give me any sort of the confidence to say that he would keep that like sort of was it right or was it or left side like was it solid. So like I said, I wouldn't go as far to say as it's underwhelming, but ever like throughout this year he's not like, well, I mean, to my mind he's not really had any kind of like standouts was the games as such, but who knows, maybe like going in to the next year with like a different system, who knows. But to kind of keep it in that same note as well, more to do so as a team as well. Why is our away form so shite? Like in every season, why is it? Why is it like generally like as far as I've watched Hearts, going back to 2002, 2003, we've never really had a season where we've actually played all right, like away from home, because obviously we, like, like, I mean, like, I would say was it quite fair to say, like, outside the old firm, I would argue that was it that the Kent was it that was it Tinga was it Castle is the hardest place to come to, but in that same sense as well, like, is there any particular like sort of reason or any sort of sort of answer as to why throughout the last 10, maybe 20 years are like, so was it going away from home, it's just not there.
Well, I'll just jump in with a stat that I found which absolutely horrified me and kind of sums it up. It was somebody on Twitter that posted it. It says a very stark difference between our home and away league form: 38 points and 43 goals scored at home, better than last season, but only 16 points and 20 goals scored away from home. So it's worse than last season's away form total. I think our away form has us like sixth in the league or something like that in the away form table. And I wish I knew what the answer was. I genuinely wish I knew what the answer was. And I think everybody wishes they knew what the answer was. I think multiple Hearts managers of the past would wish they knew what the answer was. But I think for me, and this might be me with my Stephen Naismith blinkers on, it might be a case of, from based off that stat, we just don't score enough goals. We just don't create enough chances away from home. And maybe if you're Nazy, you're looking at it going, well, let's try and play on the front foot away from home for a change. Let's go to places that we should be able to win and actually show that we can. Like, I messaged John earlier on, just prior to coming on this, that I was again scrolling through stuff, and the game this season at Tannadice where we drew and everybody got injured, that game for me just sums it up. Obviously we lost Gordon that day. I think Halkett was injured that day as well. And if we can't go to places like away against Dundee United, who've been absolutely rank rotten all season long, and are down at the bottom end of the table, relegated, and rightly so, and we can't win there, that for me is an issue. Like, I can take going away to St Mirren, for example, because they've had a very good season by their standards, and their defensive record is very good. I could take a point away from home there at a stretch, but I still feel like we should be going there to win. But yeah, there's grounds that we just go to, and it's almost like we just have an allergy to being away from home. I don't know what it is. But yeah, like as I say, hopefully under Nazy with a bit more of attacking intent, there might well be more opportunities for us to get points in these games.
If I can just jump in next, I think most football clubs perform better at home than they do away. It's just kind of normal that you don't expect teams to play as well away from home as they do at home, away from home as they do at home. In our case, I think it's reasonable to say, even without the Hearts fans' bias, that there is something particularly special about playing at Tynecastle. There's just an environment and an atmosphere at Tynecastle, especially when it's packed to the rafters, which it usually is these days. Something very special about playing at home at Tynecastle. And I think that has a psychological effect on our squad, especially within the last couple of seasons where there has been a massive amount of emphasis placed on we're putting 18, 20,000 people every other week into Tynecastle and the place is always bouncing. I think that has a psychological effect when that gets removed from the equation. I don't necessarily think that it's anything that's been added in terms of pressure away from home. I think it's the removal of that crutch, maybe you could call it. Like, there is the crutch of the Tynecastle roar and people being absolutely going mental during kind of the highlights of home games. That's missing when they go anywhere else. Ibrox, Celtic Park, very intimidating places to go for the best of teams. Like, we've seen European teams come to Ibrox and Celtic Park and struggle. Smaller grounds and stuff like that. It's just, and there's plastic pitches and there's other aspects of it as well. But I think the absence of the home atmosphere psychologically affects the Hearts more than it would the average club. And I think that's a big factor. I think that plays a massive factor into our away form.
Graham, what's your thoughts on that, buddy?
I think a lot of it's to do with mentality. I mean, I can understand going to places like Celtic Park and Ibrox because you're not expected to have a lot of the ball in those places. I can understand that. But up until December last year, we hadn't beat St Johnstone at McDermott Park for about 12 years, which is an absolute disgrace. We should not be getting beat there every time we go there. We should be going to these places and saying, look, we're Hearts. We're coming here to dominate this game and walk away with 3 points. Like what Celtic and Rangers do. I know we're not Celtic and Rangers, but that's what we should be doing. We tried to claim that we're the third best team in Scotland, and I do think we are. Maybe this season we're not, but we should be going to these places and dominating these games and winning these games. But at times we just don't do it, and I think it's a mentality thing. And I think now, and I said this on Twitter a few weeks ago, whoever got the job has got to change that mindset and has got to change that away form, because we cannot be going to another season where we only win 3 league away games. That is not good enough for a team like Hearts. We've got to be doing better than that. And I'm sure that Naismith, McAvoy and Forrest will be looking at sort that out. And I think signings will be important this season as well. Signings that are going to, that are going to go to this place and say, no, we're not coming here to get beat. We're coming here to dominate this game, win this game. That for me has not happened enough. You're looking at guys like Robin Neilson, Craig Levine, Ian Cathro. They've just not worked. And away from home, it's been terrible. It has to be better this season. We can't have another season like this again. And I do generally think that game at Ibrox last week, that's the first point we've taken off Rangers all season. And after Neilson got sacked, Andrew McKinley basically said, we've not laid the glove on Rangers this season. We need to do better next season. If we have another season like that again, where we've only won 3 league away games all season, that's unacceptable for a team like Hearts. That shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. No, totally agree. Totally agree. I think that's it. I think the fact, like you say, three away wins is horrendous. And yeah, I think, like, talking about Nazy again, I'm going to keep talking about him because I've got him in my head right now. The attacking sort of things that he's coming out with, and the mentality of saying, we are Hearts, this is what we should be doing, and not even just when he talks about like the young players coming through and giving them a pathway. Like, I've been really, really impressed with that. But again, that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But just the way he talks about the game and the way that, like, I've watched his after-match interviews when he's speaking about the games that he was in charge of, and the way it comes across, even when we're winning, he's basically saying, well, yeah, but that's the minimum that we should be doing. And that's what you want to hear. And again, it might be that he was kind of maybe saying big things because he was auditioning for the job full time. Maybe we might see a change in him now that he's got it, but I certainly hope. I don't think so, because I don't think Nady comes across as that sort of person. But yeah, it'll be very, very interesting. I think in terms of summer, in terms of recruitment and all that side, I think it'll be very, very interesting to see the sort of players that Naismith will bring in. I don't know whether he'll bring in your maybe unknown quantities, the likes of, we saw obviously Kai Rolls come in, Cammy Devlin, etc. They've all been recommended to Robbie at the time by Joe Savage and his recruitment wizards. That's maybe we might see that. We might see some more of that, or Naismith might go, well, actually, I'd rather go with somebody I know, or somebody that I know can handle this league and this team and know what Hearts is about. And I'm not saying that that means we flood the team with, journeymen and veterans, because we've seen that before as well, and it didn't work. Glenn Whelan being the perfect example. I had to actually physically remind myself that Glenn Whelan played for Hearts the other day. Like, I saw a picture of him in a Hearts shirt, and I was like, holy shit, I forgot that happened. So I don't want that again. I don't want that again. But if there can be some happy medium, I'll be very, very interested. And that's one of the other reasons why I kind of wanted Nazy to get the job, just because I think it'd be quite interesting to see how he builds this team. And I think I said it a couple of weeks ago on Twitter as well about, to me, Stephen Naismith comes across as a bit more of a kind of mentality manager and maybe a bit more of a personal manager, if that makes sense. Like, in the brief time that he's been at in the job, a lot of the players have come out saying, yeah, he's changed things, he's making changes, and it's, the players are buying into it, and you can see that. And that's probably why he's got the job now. But yeah, I think the summer is going to be very, very interesting. I think it has to be better. Like you said, Graham, you said it earlier about January, and I think you're absolutely spot on. I think January was the point when the season just went to the shitter, in the nicest possible way, because we bottled it. We tried to get Patterson, we couldn't get him, and then we realised, oh fuck, we probably need 3 or 4 other players, and we didn't get them. But yeah, it'll be very, very interesting to see what the summer holds. And obviously, there's players that will need to be replaced, the likes of Michael Smith that left, Gary Mackay-Steven that left, Steve Humphreys that's gone. Obviously, the loanees will be away. James Hill will be away taking another stepping stone somewhere else, hopefully. Maybe he's taught somebody how to throw a ball long before he's left. I don't quite know. But aye, so it'll be very, very interesting. I don't know if you want to just kind of move on to that, Ewan, when we're talking about summer plans or expectations for next season, if that's maybe where we want to go.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm gonna actually say so like we can what was it? Well, they kind of was to roll this into one to end. It was like the episode. So obviously we've I got our own like opinions on how the seasons went. Players who have been a bit more kind of was it underwhelming. What do we all want to see next year? As of course we've said at the start, was it that whether Naismith's got that true job now, so that gives us maybe a bit more of a clear like opinion on what we want to like sort of see throughout the next year as well, because we've had a taste of what a Naismith-esque team looks like. So from your own like opinions, in terms of the actual team, how we play, who would you like to see brought in? Who would you like to see the gone? Is there anybody you feel that could like sort of like to prove on themselves? The floor like is yours, guys. I mean, I can open up the conversation. Janelle's got to get that fucking contract signed fucking pronto.
The longer that's rolling on, the more I'm concerned about it. But I certainly hope he stays, because I don't, like we've said it before, I don't really know how you replace him and his output. I'll say kind of what I said already. Scott Arfield 5-year deal, anyone?
Fucking hell. The next Andy Halliday on its way, boy. Get the
No,
fucking
in all
sash on the go.
God, in all seriousness, like I just I'm very very interested in how the rest of this summer is going to go. Now that the manager's secured and done, I hope Gino's not too far away from signing, or at least we know what's happening one way or the other. Because the not knowing is the frustrating thing, and it's like, right, if you're staying, just put it out that you're staying, and we'll all be happy and we'll all move on, and it'll be great. If not, then there needs to be something done. But in terms of next season, I just want to see us having a go, and I think under Stephen Naismith we're going to do that because we've seen it already. Pre-season will be very interesting, what he does with them and how they drill it all in together, his systems, his shapes, whether he carries on doing what he has been doing. But yeah, it's. I think there are lots of reasons to be optimistic for next season. Okay, we've maybe going to have a slightly shorter European campaign based off of some of the opponents that we could get in the qualifiers that we have to play, so we might not get through. But, and I've said this before, Aberdeen being in group stage European football could be huge for us because we saw the toll that it took on our squad, in the midweek weekend games. I don't look at Aberdeen's team now and think they have enough to cope. They've got money coming in because they've sold McCrory to Bristol City. I think that's confirmed already.
Yeah.
The boy Duck, he might be going. That Leighton Clarkson is away. He was a loanee. They might get him back, but that Aberdeen team needs a lot of surgery. It does. It needs a lot of surgery for them to cope with midweek weekend. And I think from our point of view, we have to start the season well because just think that it's an opportunity to put some points on the board early doors and try and open up a gap and say, right, if we want to be established as the third best team in the country, we have to do that. We have to put that out there and take advantage of other teams potentially having slip ups like what Aberdeen did to us this season. Anyway, what's anybody else's thoughts on it?
So I think I don't think that this team is missing all that much. I think we had the quality to get the job done this year. I think the players, from a mentality standpoint, like Graham pointed to earlier, absolutely chucked it. That's unforgivable. I think with Naismith in, that's less likely to happen. He's very much a mentality guy, like you said, Alan. He seems to know how to handle them in a way that Robbie seemed to either not be able to or had certainly lost the dressing room by the end of it. I think if we can get Boyce and we can get Benny back and we can get Halkett back, either in time for the start of the season or early doors. I think Craig Gordon, I think he's mentioned that he's targeting the sort of first third or so of the season, so he's hoping to be back by autumn.
That's still fucking ridiculous. Away, that
which
man's
is
made a
which is
fucking
completely
steal.
mental. Yeah, but if we can get those guys back, that's like new signings right there. That's four guys
literally.
who are potentially going to shore up the team. Like that's basically the core of the team that's been missing. So if we can get them back, I would maybe take a punt at trying to see if we can get Humps back as backup up front. I was really impressed by Stephen Humphreys. He's pacey, he's very strong, he's a good guy to bring on with 10, 15 left if you're looking to kind of body defenders and try to kind of put the game away. So I would try and get him back. I certainly wouldn't try to retain Hill. I would send him. I would punt him as far as possible. I don't like his attitude, the way that he behaved.
Correct. You can come back, John. Correct.
Yeah, I would punt George Grant. I would get rid of him. If someone's willing to pay for him, then all the better. But I just don't think he's going to be able to bring much to this team moving forward. I would maybe look at moving on Forrest because I think that we've got Utaro Oda, we've got Ginnelly as wide players. I think we've got Barry Mackay. He's more than capable of being better than he has been, and I think he actually showed it in the last few games of the season. Under Naismith, I think he could be reborn. So I would probably move on Forrest, but quite optimistic to be honest. Especially, like I say, I think the key is getting Boyce and Beningame and Halkett and Gordon back as soon as possible. I mean, it's probably expecting a lot to expect all of them to be back in time for pre-season, but if we can get them in early doors and get some playing minutes under their legs, the one that would probably be a big concern would be Benny, because of just how long he's been out. He's been out for like, what is it, 14, 15 months now. Who knows what kind of player he's going to be when he comes back. But if we can get them back in a reasonable time frame, that's pretty much a core of the lineup right there. And I think that we could potentially not just be comfortable in third. I think we could have like a really good cup run again. I think we could potentially be challenging for one of the cups if we can get those guys back and get them back to something resembling the kind of players that they were before. I don't think that's a concern with either Boyce or Halkett. I think Craig Gordon, he's probably going to take more of a back seat, which I would be completely fine with. Like, if Craig Gordon's your backup, you're going to be pretty happy with it. If Craig Gordon comes back and he's number one, I wouldn't be too worried either. I don't really think that Harry Stone is ready to make the step up and be Xander Clark's deputy. So it would be ideal if we can get Craig Gordon back pretty early on. But just to get those guys back would be ideal. And I think that we will challenge for the cups at least, and I think we'll be comfortably third if we can get those guys in. We can bring back maybe a Humphreys or someone of that caliber to shore up the attack. And bring in a couple of young guys as well. I mean, we've got some really talented youngsters in the squad, like your Connor Smiths, your Finlay Pollocks and guys like them. If we can start to bleed them in here and there, get them 15, 20 minutes, they can really start to kick on and make their mark. I think we've got more than enough resources there already to make a go at it.
Good shout. And was the Graham? What was the fantasy in? Was it next season, buddy?
Well, now that I'm just ficked off, we better win the treble and be invincible next season, or I'll be fucking raging.
That's the spirit, son. That's the spirit.
I think realistically, we have to be third. We have to be finishing third and really up their chances for the cups as well. I think for me, I'd like another right back in to compete with Atkinson. I'd like another centre back in as well. I'd like a creative midfield, like a proper playmaker in that midfield, because I don't think we've really got one just now. I think I'd like another attacker as well. We need a bit more options off the bench. European games are going to be huge. There's no doubt, as the guys have mentioned there, getting guys like Benny, Halkett, Gordon, Boyce back would be huge. But I think as well, the fact that Naismith is there now, I would expect to see more youngsters getting a chance now. I'm a massive fan of Connor Smith. He's a great wee player. Finlay Pollock, really good player as well. I'm expecting to see more of them. James Wilson might get a chance. I know he's young, but he might get a chance. So I think, there has to be optimism. I am sceptical of the appointment, but there has to be optimism. And I think as well, what a lot of folk haven't touched on as well is the fact that, and I know it divides opinion, I'm a massive fan of Cammy Devlin. He's maybe not the most technically gifted, but he gives you a lot in that midfield. And I think it'll be interesting to see how Naismith plays him. Is he going to play Benny and Devlin, or is he going to swap it around and play somebody else in there? But I think there's a lot to look forward to. And I think the biggest thing for me is recruitment. He's got to get recruitment right. I know he won't have a lot of say in the signing process. It'll be Joe Savage that does that, but he's got to sign well, because we need to sign quality. I think Aberdeen, for me, I don't think they'll get very far in Europe. They'll probably get punted out quite quickly. We have to be taking advantage of that. We need to be up there challenging, getting third place and getting back to those group stage football again, because last season was great. It was brilliant. I loved it. We won the 2 games against RFS, I expected, but the games at home with Fiorentina and Besiktas, they were great occasions. The away games were great occasions. We have to get back to that again. And I think the biggest thing for me is we have to win a cup. We need to win a cup again. It's been far too long since we won one. We have to win a cup again. And I'm sure that Naismith will be instilling that into the players, but I'm looking forward to the season. But I just want us to sing well in the summer. We do that, I'll be more than happy.
Good shout, mate. Well, we are really coming to the end of this episode, but just as the quick fire from everyone, where are we going to finish next season, John?
I'm going to make a bold prediction. We are going to win the Scottish Cup next year, and we're going to finish third, but we're going to win the Scottish Cup. Good shout.
Alan?
I'm going for a third place and by at least a 5-point margin.
Very good. And the Graham?
We're winning the fucking lot. It's coming to Courtney. No, we're gonna finish third. We're gonna
Open
finish
top
third.
bus. Here we go.
We're going to finish third, and we're finally going to win the League Cup. The only one I've not seen us win. We're winning that this next season. Telling you.
Good shout.
I would take
Love
that,
it,
Liam.
guys.
I would take that.
Love it, guys. Love it. Well, from all that we've talked about throughout this episode, we will put it onto our Twitter pages as well. What your opinions on who we want to see what was it the come in and go? What would you like to see from this Naismith team? Are you happy with the Naismith appointment? And what would you expect from next year as well? So from myself and Alan, I'm sure that we're massively thankful for both John and the Graham for coming on. Honestly, guys, it has been an absolute pleasure, and we'll hopefully have you guys on again throughout next season. And myself and Alan will be back was it close enough to the start of the start of season 2023. But from all of us, thank you so much for watching as well. We will leave all of our links in the description, and to everyone as well, thank you very much for all your views and your new subscriptions as well. We do massively appreciate it. But until we come back for the new season, we do hope you have an amazing summer, and we will see you very soon. Everybody take care, and bye for now.